It was a cold January day in Boston, and after days of frigid temperatures, the sun finally brought a little warmth. People filled the streets, going about their normal routines, when, somewhere in the distance, a low rumbling began. It was quiet at first, but then it grew louder. Suddenly, a massive wave of thick, bubbling goo came rushing through the streets. Houses were ripped from their foundations, animals disappeared beneath the sticky liquid, and people were thrown from their feet before they even had time to react. This is the story of the Great Molasses Flood. To understand how something this bizarre could happen, we need to go back to the previous day. The Purity Distilling Company, a chemical firm in Boston, was preparing for a new shipment of molasses. The plan was simple: unload the molasses into one of their massive storage tanks where it would be kept until it could be transported to another facility where it would be processed into alcohol. The shipment was delivered, the enormous tank was filled, and everything seemed to be normal. But there was one important detail. It had been bitterly cold for days, and now the temperature was finally rising above 40 degrees. And that sudden warmth would become the catalyst for one of the strangest disasters in American history. The next morning, life in Boston carried on as usual. But at the Purity Distilling Company, pressure was mounting. Inside, the molasses had begun to ferment, and on the outside, the temperatures were rising. Together, those conditions created the perfect circumstances for the pressure inside the tank to rise. The tank was gargantuan. It stood 50 feet tall and 90 feet wide, and near the base, a manhole cover had failed. Then, a crack began to form. Then the first rivet popped. Then another, and soon more followed. Witnesses described the sound as being like that of machine gun fire as the rivets erupted from the tank. And then in an instant, the tank burst open, sending 2.3 million gallons of molasses hurtling into the streets. And this wasn't some just slow-moving spill. Molasses is about 40% denser than water, meaning the tank held far more potential energy than if it had been filled with water. When the tank failed, all that energy was released at once. A wall of molasses, roughly 25 feet high, came roaring through the street at about 35 miles per hour. The destruction was immediate. Buildings were swept from their foundations and crushed. People and animals were thrown around like rag dolls. And the flood picked up debris as it went, turning even more dangerous. Even a truck was picked up like a toy and thrown into the harbor. The Boston Post described the scene as follows: molasses, waist deep, covered the street and swirled and bubbled about the wreckage. Here and there struggled to form. Whether it was animal or human being was impossible to tell. Only an upheaval, a thrashing about in the sticky mass showed where any life was. Horses died like flies on sticky flypaper. The more they struggled, the deeper in the mess they were ensnared. Human beings, men and women, suffered likewise. And the danger wasn't over once the initial wave had passed. At first, the flood moved fast enough to sweep people away and demolish buildings, but as it settled, it became thicker, more gelatinous, trapping people in place, which made it even more terrifying. The flood wasn't just powerful, it was sticky, heavy, and almost impossible to escape from. Luckily, help arrived quickly, but the rescue was incredibly difficult. Navy sailors aboard the USS Nantucket, which was docked nearby, were among the first on the scene. They rushed into the knee-deep syrup and tried to pull the survivors free. Soon, police officers, Red Cross members, and Army and Navy personnel joined the effort. But moving through the molasses was exhausting. Rescuers had to fight through the thick syrup with every step, and the rescue effort ended up taking 4 days. There were so many people that were injured that a makeshift hospital had to be set up in a nearby building. In total, about 150 people were injured and 21 were killed. And the cleanup itself took weeks. Crews used salt water from a fireboat to wash away the molasses, and used sand to absorb what was left. But even after the streets were cleared, signs of the disaster lingered. It's said that Boston smelled of molasses for decades afterward. After the disaster, a class action lawsuit was brought against the company that owned the Purity Distilling Company. The company tried to claim that the tank had been blown up by anarchists. I'm not even kidding. They tried to go the anarchist angle because some of the alcohol that was going to be produced was going to be used in munitions. But investigators found a much simpler and much more damning explanation. The tank had not been properly built or properly tested. Arthur Gell, the company's treasurer, oversaw the project, despite having no architectural or engineering experience. With all of those qualifications, I can't imagine a better man for the job. He ignored basic safety tests and warning signs, such as the tank groaning whenever it was being filled. The tank had reportedly leaked so badly that it was painted brown to hide the stains. After 3 years of hearings, the company was found responsible and ordered to pay $11 million in damages, adjusted for inflation. The disaster also led to stronger construction regulations, including requiring oversight by a civil engineer or an architect. The Great Molasses Flood sounds almost impossible when you first hear about it. A wave of molasses tearing through a city sounds like something out of a cartoon or some sort of crazy dream or something. But for the people of Boston, it was a real disaster, caused by negligence, ignored warning signs, and a dangerous lack of oversight. And while the story is strange, its lesson is important. When safety is treated like an afterthought, the consequences can be deadly. Thankfully, the disaster helped push construction standards forward, making something this bizarre and this preventable from ever happening again. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye-bye.